Hello everybody, this is Refresh, and I am here to bring you a battle between two Ravnica Allegiance sealed decks. Over here we have Rakdos, and over there we have Orzhov, and we'll be playing the best of three, and we'll roll to see who goes first. Rakdos rolls a 5. Orzhov rolls a 3. Rakdos will have to go first, we'll draw 7. Rakdos draws an Orzhov Guildgate, Debtor's Transport, Mountain, Blade Juggler, Skewer the Critics, Blade Brand, and Get the Point. It doesn't look like we can really reliably cast anything here, so we're going to mulligan and go to 6. Our second hand has a Grasping Throw, Blade Brand, Clamor Shaman, Final Payment, Rakdos Guildgate, Feral Macaw, and Mountain. Because we can cast the Feral Macaw, and hopefully we can draw into whatever we need to play the rest of this here, we'll go ahead and keep this hand. Because we don't have white mana, we're going to put the Final Payment at the bottom of the deck. Orzhov draws 7 cards. They are Impassioned Orator, Imperious Oligarch, Orzhov Guildgate, 10th District Veteran, Civic Stalwart, Pitiless Pontiff, and Basilica Bellhaunt. One tap land is not enough to be able to support this hand, so we're going to mulligan and go to 6. Our second hand has an Imperious Oligarch, Angelic Exaltation, Grotesque Demise, Judith, the Scourge Diva, Pitiless Pontiff, Swamp, and Civic Stalwart. Again, one land is not going to cut it, so we'll mulligan again and go to 5. Now we have an Ill-Gotten Inheritance, 10th District Veteran, another Ill-Gotten Inheritance, a Plains, a Justicar's Portal, an Orzhov Enforcer, and an Imperious Oligarch. This is, again, another hand that we cannot keep. So we're going to mulligan yet again and go to 4. Alright, now we have Judith the Scourge Diva, Plains, Rakdos Guildgate, Impassioned Order, Ill-Gotten Inheritance, Taste of Karlov, and Plains. This is a keepable hand. We have some castables here. So what we will do is we will keep the Guildgate, the Plains, and we'll put away the Taste of Karlov. We'll put away a Plains, and we'll put away an Ill-Gotten Inheritance, and that's what we'll keep. Turn 1, Rakdos will play a Rakdos Guildgate tapped, and Rakdos will pass the turn. Orzhov will draw, we'll get a Knight of Sorrows, we'll play the Rakdos Guildgate tapped, and Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos untaps, Rakdos draws, gets a Debtor's Transport, we'll play the Mountain, we'll tap the Rakdos Guildgate and the Mountain, and play the Feral Macaw, which is a 2/2 for 2, and it's a cat, and then Rakdos will pass the turn. Orzhov will untap, Orzhov will draw, they'll get a Plains, they'll play the Plains, and they'll tap the Rakdos Guildgate and the Plains, and play the Impassioned Order, and then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos untaps, Rakdos draws, gets a Rakdos Fire Wheeler, Rakdos will attack with the Feral Macaw into the Impassioned Orator. Orzhov will decline to block, take 2, and go to 18. And Rakdos will pass the turn. They might need to use the Blade Brand on their own creature just to cycle for a land. Orzhov untaps. Orzhov draws, gets a Plains, will play the Plains. Now Orzhov will attack with the Impassioned Orator for 2. Rakdos cannot block, will take 2 and go to 18. Orzhov will move to pass the turn. At the end of the turn, Rakdos will tap the Guildgate for black in the Mountain and play Blade Brand, targeting the Feral Macaw, giving it Death Touch until end of turn, and then draw a card. They'll draw a card, and then Rakdos will pass priority back to Orzhov. Orzhov will end the turn. Rakdos untaps. Rakdos draws, gets a Rubble Belt Recluse. Rakdos still has no lands, and so they don't have a lot that they can do. They will attack with Feral Macaw again for 2. Orzhov cannot block, and will take 2 and go to 16. Rakdos will pass the turn. Orzhov untaps. Orzhov draws, gets a Swamp. Orzhov will play the Swamp. Orzhov will tap the Rakdos Guildgate for red, the Swamp for black, and one of the Plains. And then we'll play Judith the Scourge Diva. She is a 2/2 legendary creature human shaman, and other creatures you control gain +1/+0, and whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Judith the Scourge Diva deals 1 damage to any target. As she enters the battlefield, it'll trigger the Impassioned Order. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. We'll gain 1 life to go to 17. And then we will attack with the Impassioned Order for 3. Rakdos cannot block, will take 3 and go to 15. Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos untaps. Rakdos draws, gets an Ill-Gotten Inheritance, still no lands, and now Orzhov has a more commanding board presence, and so Rakdos will just hold steady and pass the turn. Orzhov untaps. Orzhov draws. Gets an Orzhov Guildgate. Orzhov will attack with the Impassioned Orator for 3. Rakdos will offer a trade with the Feral Macaw. The trade goes through, the Feral Macaw will die. The Impassioned Orator dies. Judith the Scourge Diva's ability happens whenever a non-token creature controlled dies. Judith the Scourge Diva deals 1 damage to any target. Will target Rakdos. Rakdos takes 1 and goes to 14. Orzhov will play the Plains, and then we'll tap everything and play the Knight of Sorrows. Knight of Sorrows is a 3/3 human knight. It says Knight of Sorrows can block an additional creature each combat, and Afterlife 1, which is the ability that says when this creature dies, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. And then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos draws. Still does not get a land. Rakdos must discard a card. Well, they don't have any white mana, so the obvious thing to discard is the Grasping Scroll. And then Rakdos, unable to do anything, will pass the turn. Orzhov untaps. Orzhov draws. Gets a 10th District Veteran. Orzhov will attack with Judith the Scourge Diva and the Knight of Sorrows for a total of 6 damage. Rakdos can do nothing about that and will take 6 damage to go to 8. Orzhov will play the Guildgate tapped, and then we'll tap 3 mana to play the 10th District Veteran. It is a 2/3 human soldier with vigilance. Whenever 10th District Veteran attacks, untap another target creature you control. And then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos draws, gets a Skewer the Critics, cannot play anything yet, so we will discard the most expensive card, which is the Debtor's Transport, and Rakdos will pass the turn. Orzhov will untap. Orzhov draws, gets a mountain, will hold on to the mountain. Orzhov will attack with the 10th District Veteran, the Knight of Sorrows, the Judith, the Scourge Diva, and will use the 10th District Veteran's trigger to untap the Knight of Sorrows. That is for a total of 9 damage, which should defeat Rakdos. Rakdos dies, and that's the end of the game. Orzhov won this time around, but Rakdos only had 2 lands, and so variance apparently is the real determiner of this battle. We'll be right back for Game 2. Game 2, Rakdos will opt to go first. We'll draw 7. Draws a Scorchmark, Clamor Shaman, Ethereal Absolution, Grasping Throw, get the point, Theater of Horrors, and Plains. 1 land is not enough to cast anything. We don't want to experience what we had last time, so we'll go ahead and ship this back. Our second hand has a Mountain, Footlight Fiend, Mountain, Final Payment, Clamor Shaman, Blades Juggler. This is not a very good hand because we have 3 mountains and no black. However, because we can play 2 of the 3 cards that we have, I think we're going to keep this, and we're going to put the Final Payment at the bottom of the deck. Orzhov draws 7. They draw an Ill-Gotten Inheritance, Imperious Oligarch, Plains, Swamp, Rakdos Trumpeter, and Orzhov Enforcer. This is a very good hand, so we will keep this. Rakdos will start by playing a Mountains, tapping it, and then playing a Footlight Fiend. It is a 1/1 Devil. When Footlight Fiend dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And then Rakdos will pass the turn. Orzhov draws, gets a Swamp. Orzhov will play the Plains, and then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos untaps. Rakdos draws, gets an Ill-Gotten Inheritance, will play another Mountain, and Rakdos will attack with the Footlight Fiend for 1. Orzhov can't block, will take 1 and go to 19. Rakdos has no other plays, and so will pass the turn. Orzhov draws, gets a Basilica Bellhaunt, will play the Swamp. Orzhov will tap the Swamp and the Plains, and then play the Rakdos Trumpeter. It is a 1/3 human shaman with menace, and for 3 and a red, Rakdos Trumpeter gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos untaps. Rakdos draws, gets a Rakdos Roustabout. We'll play the 3rd mountain, and we'll tap all 3 mountains, and then play the Clamor Shaman. It is a 1/1 Goblin Shaman, and it has Riot. This creature enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste, and whenever Clamor Shaman attacks, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. We'll give it the +1/+1 counter to make it a 2/2, and then we will decline to attack this turn. Orzhov untaps. Orzhov draws, gets a Rakdos Guildgate. Orzhov will play a Swamp, and Orzhov will tap the Swamp and the Plains to play the Imperious Oligarch. It is a 2/1 human cleric with vigilance and Afterlife 1. And then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos untaps. Rakdos draws, get the point, and then Rakdos doesn't see a profitable attack, and so they will choose not to attack this turn. Orzhov untaps. Orzhov draws, gets Angelic Exaltation. Orzhov will play a swamp, and then Orzhov will tap 4 mana and play the Ill-Gotten Inheritance. It is an enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep. Ill-Gotten Inheritance deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. For 5 and a black, you can sacrifice Ill-Gotten Inheritance. It deals 4 damage to target opponent, and you gain 4 life. And then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos draws, gets a mountain. Rakdos will play the mountain, and Rakdos will pass the turn. Orzhov untaps. The Ill-Gotten Inheritance triggers, and Orzhov will gain 1 life to go up to 20. Rakdos will lose 1 life to go down to 19. Orzhov will draw, get a plains. Orzhov will play the plains. Orzhov will tap 4 mana, 2 plains and 2 swamps, and play Basilica Bellhaunt. It is a 3/4 spirit. When Basilica Bellhaunt enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and you gain 3 life. It enters the battlefield, will gain 3 life to go up to 23. Rakdos will discard a card. They'll discard the Blade Juggler. And then Orzhov will attack with the Imperious Oligarch for 2. Rakdos will trade with the Footlight Fiend. Will lose the Footlight Fiend. The Imperious Oligarch dies. The Footlight Fiend's death trigger will deal 1 damage to any target. We will choose to hit Orzhov's face. Orzhov loses 1 life and goes to 22. The Imperial Oligarch's Afterlife trigger triggers, and Orzhov will get a 1/1 Flying Spirit token. And then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos draws, gets a plains, will play the plains, and Rakdos will pass the turn. Orzhov untaps. The Ill-Gotten Inheritance triggers. Orzhov will gain 1 life to go up to 23. Rakdos will lose 1 life to go down to 18. Orzhov draws, gets another Ill-Gotten Inheritance. Orzhov will play the Rakdos Guildgate tapped, and then Orzhov will tap 4 mana and play the Angelic Exaltation. It is an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. We'll then tap 4 mana and play the Ill-Gotten Inheritance, which we already have 1 of. Now we have 2. And then we will attack with everybody for 5 damage on the attack. Rakdos will block the Trumpeter and take 4 damage to go down to 14. And Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos draws, gets an Ethereal Absolution. Because of a lack of black mana, Rakdos cannot play anything, and so Rakdos will pass the turn. Orzhov untaps. The 2 Ill-Gotten Inheritance triggers, and so Orzhov will gain 2 life to go up to 25. Rakdos takes 2 damage and goes down to 12. Orzhov will draw, gets a Taste of Karlov. Orzhov will attack with everybody once again for 5 damage. Rakdos will again block the Rakdos Trumpeter with the Clamor Shaman. Orzhov will activate the Clamor Shaman's ability, spending 4 mana and making it a 3/3. Rakdos loses the Clamor Shaman and will also take 4 damage to go down to 8. This doesn't really matter to this game because I don't think Rakdos can get out of it, but the Rakdos Trumpeter has Menace, and Rakdos did not have enough creatures to block it. So we'll just act as though it blocked the Basilica Bellhaunt this time and took all the damage from last time, which is 1 more damage. Correcting for accidentally blocking a menace creature with 1 creature, we'll take the extra damage that we forgot last time and go down to 7. Orzhov will follow up by tapping the remaining mana and playing the Orzhov Enforcer. It is a 1/2 human rogue with Death Touch and Afterlife 1, and then Orzhov will pass the turn. Rakdos draws, gets a mountain, will play the mountain. Rakdos can't do anything and will lose the game as soon as the turn goes back to Orzhov. Orzhov untaps. The Ill-Gotten Inheritance trigger. Orzhov will gain 2 life to go up to 27. Rakdos loses 2 life to go to 5. Orzhov draws, gets a plains, will play the plains. Orzhov will tap 4 mana and play Teza Karlov. She is a 2/4 legendary human advisor. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time, and creature tokens you control have Vigilance and Lifelink. Then we will attack with the Basilica Bellhaunt, the Rakdos Trumpeter, the Orzhov Enforcer, and the Spirit Token, which has Vigilance and Lifelink, for 5 damage. That's one more needed than to defeat Rakdos, so Rakdos loses 2 straight sets in a row to terrible land draws. Let's go ahead and see if there were any swamps coming. That's a Feral Macaw, playable. Another mountain, okay. There's our first swamp. There's our second black mana. There's our third black mana. And a Rakdos Firewheeler. So this was not in the cards. These were clearly some very high variance games that resulted in some major losses for Rakdos. Hopefully the deck will fare better against the challenge deck when it joins forces with Orzhov. Let me know what you thought about these games in the comments below. If I made any rules errors that I did not catch, that Menace thing was definitely an error on my part, let me know. And if I made any gameplay errors, also let me know. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more such videos, hit subscribe. Next up, I'll be pitting these 2 decks up against the Face the Hydra challenge deck from Theros. Until then, this was Refresh, and thanks for watching.